I never thought my own son would betray me. Not like this. Not Marcus. But life has a way of teaching you lessons you never asked to learn, and this one almost destroyed me before it rebuilt me into someone stronger. My name is Catherine Monroe, and for 32 years, I poured everything I had into raising my son alone after his father walked out on us when Marcus was just 3 years old. I worked double shifts as a nurse, skipped meals so he could have seconds, wore the same coat for 10 winters while he got new sneakers every school year. I never complained. That is what mothers do. We sacrifice. We endure. We love unconditionally. The beach house in Seabrook was my one treasure, my one piece of proof that all those years of struggle had been worth something. My mother left it to me when she passed 8 years ago. It was not much. Just a small cottage with faded blue shutters and a wraparound porch that creaked when you walked across it. But it sat right on the dunes, close enough to the ocean that you could fall asleep to the sound of waves and wake up to seagulls calling. That house held every good memory I had of my childhood. Summer afternoons with my parents, building sandcastles and collecting shells. The smell of my mother's blueberry pie cooling on the kitchen windowsill. The feeling of being safe and loved. After Marcus graduated from college and started his job at the marketing firm downtown, I began spending more time at the beach house. My retirement was still 5 years away, but I had started planning for it. I would fix up the cottage, maybe rent it out during peak season to supplement my pension, and spend my golden years watching the sunrise over the Atlantic. I had earned that dream. I had paid for it with 3 decades of exhaustion and loneliness. Marcus met Jennifer at a company networking event 2 years ago. She was beautiful in that polished, intimidating way, with perfect blonde hair that never seemed to have a strand out of place and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She worked in finance, came from money, and made sure everyone knew it. From the first dinner I had with them, I could tell she looked down on me. The way she glanced at my department store dress, the tiny pause before she answered when I asked about her family, the subtle redirection whenever Marcus mentioned our modest apartment in the city. Marcus insisted everything was fine. He told me I was being oversensitive. He said Jennifer was just different from what I was used to, that she came from a different world, but she was trying. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the boy I raised, the one who used to bring me dandelions and call them roses, would not choose someone who made his mother feel small. Then came the engagement. Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice bubbling with excitement. Jennifer had said yes. They were getting married in 6 months. Spring wedding, he said. Jennifer was already planning everything. I forced enthusiasm into my voice, told him I was happy for him, asked if I could help with anything. He said Jennifer's mother had everything under control. Of course she did. The months that followed were a blur of being politely excluded. Jennifer's mother, Patricia, took over every aspect of the wedding planning. I was not asked about flowers or music or the menu. When I offered to host a small engagement party, Marcus gently suggested that Patricia had already planned something at the country club. When I asked about my role in the ceremony, Jennifer said they were keeping the wedding party small, just her sister as maid of honor, and Marcus's college roommate as best man. I was not even asked to do a reading. I swallowed my hurt. I reminded myself that this was Marcus's day, that modern weddings were different, that I needed to let go and let him build his own life. But it stung. It stung in a way that kept me awake at night, staring at my ceiling, wondering where I had gone wrong, wondering when my son had stopped seeing me as someone who mattered. 3 months before the wedding, Marcus came to visit me at the apartment. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. I knew something was wrong immediately. A mother knows. Marcus started talking fast, the words tumbling out. He and Jennifer had found their dream house. A beautiful place in the suburbs with a big backyard, perfect for starting a family. But it was expensive, more than they had saved. The wedding was already costing a fortune. Patricia was paying for most of it, but they were still stretched thin. They needed a down payment, a substantial one. I felt the dread building in my chest before he even said it. Marcus looked at me with those eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at me when he was 5 and asked if we could keep the stray puppy he had found. He said he had been thinking. The beach house in Seabrook. It was just sitting there most of the year. I was not using it much, was I? And property values in that area had gone up significantly. If we sold it, he could use the money for the down payment. He would pay me back, of course, once they were settled. He promised. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I could not breathe for a moment. That house was not just property. It was my mother's legacy. It was my future. It was the only thing I had that was truly mine. Marcus kept talking. He said Jennifer really loved the suburban house. He said they needed to move fast or they would lose it. He said he knew it was a big ask, but he was desperate. He said he would never ask if it was not important. He looked at me with such hope, such expectation, and I felt the familiar weight of motherhood pressing down on me. The weight of always having to be the one who gives. I told him I needed time to think about it. His face fell. He said they needed an answer within a week. The sellers were considering other offers. I watched him leave, and I felt something crack inside my chest. I did not sleep that night, or the next. I kept thinking about all the times I had said yes when I wanted to say no. All the times I had sacrificed what I needed for what Marcus wanted. All the times I had convinced myself that was what good mothers did. But this felt different. This felt like I was being asked to give up not just money or time, but a piece of my soul. The beach house was supposed to be my refuge, my reward for all those years of struggle. And Marcus wanted me to hand it over so he could impress a woman who barely acknowledged my existence. I called my sister Diana, who lived 3 states away. She had always been more practical than me, more willing to speak hard truths. I told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Diana finally spoke. Her voice was gentle but firm. She said I had spent my entire adult life putting Marcus first. She said it was time for me to put myself first for once. She said no was a complete sentence. She said if Marcus really loved me, he would understand. She said if he did not understand, that told me everything I needed to know. But Diana did not understand. She had 3 kids, a husband, a normal family. She had not raised a child alone, had not felt the constant fear that one wrong move would ruin them forever. She had not carried the guilt of a broken home on her shoulders every single day. I agonized over the decision for 5 days. I barely ate. Food tasted like ash in my mouth. I called in sick to work, something I had done maybe 3 times in 30 years. My supervisor was concerned, asked if I was okay. I lied and said I had the flu. I drove out to the beach house and sat on the porch, watching the waves, trying to figure out what the right answer was. I walked through every room, touching the walls, remembering. The kitchen where my mother had taught me to make her famous blueberry pie, her hands guiding mine as we crimped the crust. The living room where we had played board games on rainy afternoons, my father cheating shamelessly to make me laugh. The small bedroom where I had spent my teenage summers, reading novels and dreaming about my future. The porch where I had sat with my mother during her last visit, just months before she died, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. I remembered bringing Marcus here when he was little, building sandcastles on the beach, teaching him to body surf, collecting seashells and sea glass, filling jars with treasures, reading him bedtime stories while the waves crashed outside. Those were good memories, simple memories. Before life got complicated, before he grew up and away from me. I sat on the porch swing and let myself imagine the future I had planned. Retiring early, moving here full-time, painting watercolors of the ocean, hosting Diana and her family for summer visits. Maybe someday, Marcus bringing his own children to play on the same beach where he had played. Continuing the legacy my mother had left me, passing it on to the next generation. But that future was slipping away. Marcus was not asking to borrow money. He was asking me to sell my inheritance, my security, my dreams. And for what? So he could impress a woman who looked at me like I was an embarrassment. So he could buy a house in the suburbs that would never hold the memories this one did. So he could start a life that apparently had no room for me in it. My mother's voice echoed in my memory, telling me that family was everything. She had believed that. She had sacrificed for my father, for me, without complaint. She had taught me that a woman's role was to support, to nurture, to give. But my own voice, the one I had silenced for so long, whispered that I mattered too, that my dreams had value, that saying no did not make me a bad mother. I stayed at the beach house until dark. I watched the sun set over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I listened to the waves, trying to find answers in their rhythm. I asked the universe what to do. I asked my mother what she would want me to do. But the only answer was the wind and the water and my own breaking heart. On the sixth day, Marcus called me. He sounded stressed. He needed an answer. They were running out of time. I could hear Jennifer in the background, her voice sharp, asking what I had said. I felt the pressure like a vice around my chest. And I did what I had always done. I caved. I told Marcus yes. I told him he could sell the beach house. I told him I would sign whatever papers he needed. I heard the relief in his voice. Heard him tell Jennifer the good news. Heard her squeal with delight. He thanked me profusely. He said I was the best mom in the world. He said he would make it up to me. He said I would not regret this. I hung up the phone and cried for 3 hours straight. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Marcus handled everything. He said it would be easier that way, that I did not need to stress about the details. Part of me was grateful. Part of me felt robbed of even the ability to say goodbye properly. A real estate agent contacted me with papers to sign. Her name was Sharon, a brisk woman in her 50s who spoke in bullet points and efficiency. She explained the process quickly, pointed to where I needed to sign, told me the house would likely sell within 2 weeks given the market conditions. She did not ask why I was selling. She did not see the tears I was holding back. I signed them in a daze, barely reading the words. My hand shook as I wrote my name over and over, Catherine Monroe, Catherine Monroe, Catherine Monroe. With each signature, I felt like I was signing away a piece of myself. The house sold fast. The market was hot, Sharon had said. Waterfront properties were in high demand. A young couple from Boston bought it. They were expecting their first child. They were excited about raising their family by the ocean. Sharon told me this as if it would make me feel better. As if knowing strangers would make new memories in my mother's house would somehow ease my grief. I never even got to say goodbye properly. I had thought I would have time. Time to pack up my mother's things. Time to take photos. Time to walk the beach one last time and etch every detail into my memory. But Marcus had been in such a rush, and the buyers wanted to close quickly, and suddenly it was done. One day I had a beach house, and the next day I had a check made out to Marcus Alexander Monroe. I deposited it into his account without ceremony. My mother's legacy, converted into numbers on a screen, transferred to my son with a few clicks on my phone. I drove out to the beach house one last time before the new owners took possession. I knew I was not supposed to. The sale had closed. It was not mine anymore. But I needed to see it one more time. I parked down the street and walked to the beach access path. I did not go into the house. I could not bear to. I just stood on the sand, looking up at it. The faded blue shutters. The wraparound porch. The weathered shingles. The small window of the bedroom where I had slept as a child. I stood there for an hour, memorizing every detail. The way the house caught the afternoon light. The sound of the wind chimes on the porch. The smell of salt and sand and summer. I said goodbye to my mother. I said goodbye to my childhood. I said goodbye to the future I had imagined. And then I turned and walked away, knowing I would never come back. The grief hit me in waves over the following weeks. Some days I was fine, going through the motions of work and life. Other days I would be in the middle of something mundane, folding laundry or making coffee, and suddenly I would be crying so hard I could not breathe. My coworkers noticed I was different, quieter, but I brushed off their concerns. I said I was just tired. I said I was fine. I said everything was okay. I lied. Marcus sent me a text saying thank you with a heart emoji. 5 words and a tiny graphic to acknowledge that I had given him everything. Jennifer did not say anything at all. Not a call, not a message, nothing. It was as if my sacrifice meant nothing to her. As if I meant nothing to her. And maybe I did not. Maybe I had always been just an obstacle to be removed. I threw myself into work, trying not to think about what I had lost. My coworkers noticed I was different, quieter, but I brushed off their concerns. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Helen Reeves, a kind woman in her 60s who specialized in family dynamics. She asked me why I had said yes. I told her I did not know how to say no to my son. She asked me what I thought I would get in return. I said I did not expect anything in return. That was what love was. She looked at me with sad eyes and told me that love without boundaries was not love. It was self-destruction. Her words haunted me. The wedding day arrived. It was a Saturday in May, unseasonably warm, with clear blue skies that mocked my mood. The venue was a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and a fountain in the courtyard. White tents billowed in the breeze. String quartet music floated through the air. Everything was white and gold and expensive. Everything screamed wealth and status and a world I did not belong to. I wore a lavender dress I had bought on sale at a department store. I had tried to find something nicer, something that would help me blend in, but everything in my price range felt inadequate. The dress was pretty enough, but standing in that venue surrounded by designer gowns and tailored suits, I felt like a fraud. I felt underdressed, out of place, unwanted. Patricia greeted me with an air kiss, her lips not quite touching my cheek, her perfume overwhelming and expensive. She made a comment about my dress, something that sounded like a compliment but felt like an insult. She said lavender was a lovely color for spring. The way she said it made it clear she thought it was all wrong. Then she immediately turned her attention to more important guests, leaving me standing alone in the courtyard, clutching my small purse like a shield. Marcus was surrounded by Jennifer's family, laughing and taking photos. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, happy, relaxed. He waved at me from across the lawn, but did not come over. Did not introduce me to the people he was with. Did not make space for me in his circle. I waved back and smiled, pretending I was fine, pretending my heart was not breaking. I found my seat for the ceremony. Third row, behind Jennifer's extended family and Marcus's co-workers. Not second row with close family. Not first row with parents. Third row. Like I was a distant relative. Like I was an afterthought. The seats around me filled with people I did not know. They chatted with each other, friendly and familiar. No one spoke to me. No one asked who I was. I sat in silence, feeling invisible. I was not in any of the processional. I watched as Jennifer's family walked down the aisle. Her parents beaming with pride. Her grandparents, elderly but elegant. Her sister, the maid of honor, stunning in a gold gown. The bridesmaids, a parade of Jennifer's friends. Marcus's best man, his college roommate whose name I could never remember. And then Jennifer herself, a vision in white lace and diamonds, her father's arm linked with hers. Everyone stood. Everyone sighed at how beautiful she looked. And she was beautiful. I could not deny that. But all I could think was that my son was marrying a woman who had manipulated him into betraying his own mother. A woman who saw me as competition, as baggage, as something to be erased. I watched my son stand at the altar in his tailored tuxedo, looking happier than I had ever seen him. And I felt like a ghost. Present, but invisible. Necessary, but unwanted. I had given him life, raised him alone, sacrificed everything for him. And this was my reward. A third-row seat at his wedding. A half-hearted wave from across a lawn. A text message, "Thank you for giving up my inheritance." The ceremony was beautiful. The officiant, a friend of Jennifer's family, spoke about love and commitment and building a future together. He talked about two families becoming one. He mentioned Jennifer's parents by name, thanking them for raising such an accomplished daughter. He mentioned Marcus's success in his career. He did not mention me, not once. It was as if I did not exist. As if Marcus had sprung fully formed into the world without a mother who had given everything to make him who he was. Jennifer looked stunning in her designer gown, the kind that costs more than I made in 6 months. Marcus looked at her like she hung the moon, like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. His eyes never wandered to where I sat. Never checked to see if I was okay. Never acknowledged that I was there at all. I should have felt joy. I should have been crying happy tears. Every mother dreams of seeing their child get married, right? Every mother wants their child to find love and happiness. But instead, I felt hollow, empty, like I was watching a stranger's wedding. Like the son standing at that altar was not the boy I had raised. He was someone else. Someone Jennifer had molded. Someone who could erase his past without a second thought. Then came the speeches at the reception. Jennifer's father gave a long toast about his daughter's accomplishments and how proud he was. He listed her degrees, her career successes, her achievements. He talked about knowing from the time she was young that she was destined for greatness. He thanked Marcus for being worthy of his exceptional daughter. The room applauded. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, overcome with pride. The best man told funny stories about Marcus in college, stories I had never heard, stories about a version of my son I did not know, late-night pranks and spring break trips and adventures I had not been part of. Everyone laughed, I smiled on cue but felt disconnected from the entire scene, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Then Marcus stood up. He tapped his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. The room quieted. All eyes turned to him. He looked nervous but excited. He said he wanted to say a few words. He thanked everyone for coming, his voice strong and clear. He thanked Patricia for planning such a beautiful wedding, for welcoming him into their family. He thanked Jennifer's father for his kind words and for raising such an amazing woman. He thanked Jennifer for choosing him, for seeing potential in him that he did not see in himself. He talked about how she had changed his life, how she had made him want to be better, how she had shown him what was possible when you had ambition and drive. He talked about how excited he was to start their life together in their new home, the beautiful house in the suburbs with the big backyard where they would someday raise their children. The room was wrapped. Everyone smiled. Everyone nodded. This was what a wedding speech should be. Grateful, loving, forward-looking. And then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. Something that stopped my heart in my chest. Marcus raised his glass higher and looked directly at Jennifer. His eyes shone with emotion. He said he could not have done any of this without her. He said she had shown him what it meant to really work hard for something, to go after what you wanted without apology. He said she had taught him that sometimes you had to make tough decisions and put your future first, even when it was difficult. He said she had encouraged him to cut ties with things that were holding him back so they could move forward together. The room was silent, hanging on every word. I felt my chest tighten. I knew what was coming before he said it. I knew, and yet I could not believe it. Marcus paused for effect. Then he continued. He said Jennifer had helped him see that his mother's beach house was just a burden from the past. He said it represented old memories, old ways of thinking, old attachments that were keeping him stuck. He said selling it had been Jennifer's idea from the start. He said she had convinced him that holding on to old memories was preventing him from building new ones. He said letting go of the beach house was like letting go of his old life, making space for their future together. He said she had been right, as always. He said he was grateful to her for having the wisdom to see what he could not. He said he was grateful for her strength in pushing him to make the hard choice. He said he was grateful for her vision of their future, unencumbered by the past. He raised his glass one more time. To Jennifer, he said, to new beginnings, to letting go of what no longer serves us, to building something beautiful together. The room erupted in applause. Glasses clinked. People cheered. Jennifer beamed, her smile radiant and victorious. She stood and kissed Marcus, and everyone awed. Patricia looked proud, satisfied, like she had orchestrated the perfect wedding for her perfect daughter. Jennifer's friends hugged her, congratulated her, told her how lucky Marcus was. And I sat there, frozen in my third-row seat, feeling like someone had just ripped my heart out of my chest and held it up for everyone to see. My hands gripped the edge of the table. My vision blurred. My breath came in short, painful gasps. The room spun around me. It had been Jennifer's idea. Not Marcus's desperate need, not a son coming to his mother for help. It had been Jennifer's idea from the very beginning. She had orchestrated the entire thing. She had convinced Marcus that my mother's beach house, my inheritance, my future, my dreams, were nothing more than a burden to be discarded. She had seen it as competition, as a connection to his old life, as something that tied him to me. And she had wanted it gone. And Marcus, my son, the boy I had raised alone, the child I had sacrificed everything for, had gone along with it. Worse than that. He had not just agreed to her plan. He had embraced it. He was celebrating it. In front of 200 people, he was praising his wife for convincing him to betray his own mother. He was thanking her for teaching him to cut ties with things that held him back. Things. As if I was a thing. As if my love and sacrifice and 32 years of devotion were just weight to be shed. He had not come to me conflicted and desperate. He had come to me following a script his fiancée had written. Every word he had said, every pleading look, every promise to pay me back had been part of Jennifer's plan. And I had fallen for it. I had believed him. I had given him everything he asked for, and now I was watching him celebrate the manipulation. Watching him thank the woman who had orchestrated my pain. I do not remember standing up. I do not remember walking out of the reception hall. But suddenly I was in the parking lot, gulping air, my hands shaking so badly I could not find my car keys in my purse. My vision was blurred with tears. My chest felt like it was being crushed. I leaned against a car that was not mine and tried to breathe. Just breathe. In and out. In and out. But every breath felt like swallowing glass. A valet, a young man in a black vest, approached me. He asked if I was okay, if I needed help. I tried to say I was fine, but the words came out as a sob. He looked uncomfortable, unsure what to do with a crying woman in a parking lot. He asked if I needed him to call someone. I shook my head. I just needed to leave. I needed to get away from that place, from those people, from the sound of my son celebrating my betrayal. I finally found my keys. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped them twice before I managed to unlock my car. The valet watched me, concerned. He asked if I was okay to drive. I lied and said I was fine. I got in my car, shut the door, and sat there for a moment in the silence. The contrast was jarring. Inside the reception hall, music and laughter and celebration. Inside my car, just the sound of my ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My makeup was ruined, black mascara streaking down my cheeks. My eyes were red and swollen. I looked destroyed. I felt destroyed. This was supposed to be a happy day, my son's wedding day. Instead, it was the day I learned that the person I loved most in the world had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. I drove. I had no destination. I just drove, tears streaming down my face, my mind replaying Marcus's words over and over. Jennifer had helped him see. Jennifer had convinced him. Jennifer had been right. The words played on a loop, each repetition cutting deeper. My son had not just betrayed me. He had let someone else orchestrate the betrayal and then thanked her for it publicly. In front of 200 people, he had praised the woman who manipulated him into destroying his mother. I drove for hours. The sun set. The sky darkened. I found myself on back roads, then the highway, then more back roads. I passed through small towns I did not recognize. I drove until my gas tank was nearly empty, until my eyes were so swollen I could barely see, until my body was exhausted from crying. I ended up at a rest stop somewhere on the interstate. I had no idea where I was. I did not care. I sat in my car in the parking lot, under the harsh fluorescent lights, and called Diana. It was late, past midnight, but she answered on the second ring. Her voice was groggy with sleep. "Diana," I said, and then I could not say anything else. I just cried. Deep, ugly, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. She waited. She did not ask questions. She just waited until I could speak. I told her everything, about the wedding, about Marcus's speech, about Jennifer orchestrating the sale of the beach house, about feeling like I had been gutted in front of everyone, about driving for hours with nowhere to go because I could not face going home to my empty apartment where every surface reminded me of what I had lost. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Diana breathing. I imagined her sitting up in bed, her husband stirring beside her, wondering what was wrong. Then she said something I did not expect. Diana said she was sorry. Her voice cracked with emotion. She said she had been wrong to tell me Marcus would understand if I said no. She said she had underestimated how much control Jennifer had over him. She said she should have seen this coming. She said she should have driven up for the wedding, should have been there with me, should not have let me face it alone. I told her it was not her fault. But she insisted. She said she had failed me as a sister. She said she had thought giving me advice over the phone was enough. But it was not. She said I needed someone in my corner, someone physically present, and she had not been there. Diana said Marcus was not the boy I raised anymore. She said Jennifer had gotten her claws into him and twisted him into someone unrecognizable. She said grief was necessary. She said I needed to mourn the son I thought I had and face the man he had become. She said it was okay to be angry. More than okay. I had every right to be furious. She asked where I was. I told her I did not know. Some rest stop. She made me look at a sign, figure out what mile marker I was near. She stayed on the phone with me while I found my location. She asked if I felt safe to drive home. I said I did not know. She said she would stay on the phone with me the entire drive if I needed her to. I sat in that parking lot for another hour, talking to my sister. She told me stories about her kids, about her life, about nothing important. She just talked, filling the silence, keeping me tethered to something normal. Eventually, I felt calm enough to drive. Diana stayed on the phone, on speaker, as I made my way back to the city. She talked to me about her daughter's upcoming recital, about her son's struggles with algebra, about the garden she was planting. Mundane things, beautiful things. Things that reminded me there was a world beyond my pain. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, Diana said she loved me. She said she was proud of me. She said I was the strongest person she knew. She said this was not the end. It felt like the end, but it was not. She said I would survive this. She said she would make sure of it. I cried until I had no tears left. Then I went inside. Then I tried to figure out how to exist in a world where my son had become a stranger. The next morning, Marcus called me. His voice was bright, cheerful, oblivious. He sounded like someone who had just had the best day of his life. He asked where I had gone, said he had looked for me at the reception but could not find me. He said several people had asked about me. He said the wedding had been perfect. He said everyone had a wonderful time. He said the food was amazing and the band was great and Jennifer looked beautiful and he felt like the luckiest man alive. He said he and Jennifer were leaving for their honeymoon in Bali in a few hours. He was calling from the airport. They were in the first-class lounge. He said he hoped I had fun at the wedding. He said he was sorry he did not get to spend more time with me, but it had been so busy. He said he would call me when they got back in 2 weeks. He said he loved me. I listened to him talk. I listened to the happiness in his voice, the excitement, the complete absence of awareness about what he had done. He had no idea. No idea that his speech had destroyed me. No idea that I had fled the reception in tears. No idea that I had spent the night crying to my sister in a rest stop parking lot. He thought everything was fine. He thought I was fine. He thought we were fine. I took a breath. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. And for the first time in my life, I told my son the truth. The real truth. Not the sanitized version. Not the version that protected his feelings. The truth. I told him I had heard his speech, every word of it. I told him I knew it had been Jennifer's idea to sell the beach house from the very beginning. I told him I knew he had not come to me desperate and conflicted, but following a script his fiancée had written. I told him I felt betrayed, used, manipulated. I told him I had given up everything for him my entire life, and he had repaid me by letting his wife orchestrate my humiliation. There was silence on the other end of the line. Complete silence. I could hear airport announcements in the background. I could hear Jennifer asking him something, her voice muffled. Then Marcus spoke. He said I was overreacting. His voice had changed. The cheerfulness was gone, replaced by defensiveness. He said I was being dramatic. He said the beach house was just a house, just property, just wood and nails and memories that did not matter anymore. He said I was being selfish for trying to ruin his happiness. He said this was supposed to be the happiest time of his life and I was ruining it with my negativity. He said Jennifer had been right about me. His voice turned cold, hard. He said Jennifer had warned him that I was too clingy, too needy, that I could not let him grow up. He said she had told him I would try to guilt him, try to make him feel bad for living his own life. He said he had not believed her at first, but now he saw she was right. He said I was proving her right. I felt something inside me break. But this time, it was not my heart shattering. It was something else, something harder. It was the chains I had wrapped around myself for 32 years. The chains of guilt and obligation and endless giving. The chains of being the good mother who never said no, who never complained, who sacrificed everything without question. Those chains snapped. And I felt for the first time in decades free. I told Marcus that I was done. My voice was calm, steady, cold. I told him I would not be his safety net anymore. I told him I would not be dismissed and disrespected and expected to smile and take it. I told him I had given him everything I had, and he had thrown it back in my face. I told him that when he was ready to apologize, really apologize, not with excuses and justifications, but with genuine remorse, he could call me. But until then, I needed space. I needed distance. I needed to protect myself from him. Marcus scoffed. I could hear the disbelief in his voice. He said I was punishing him for being happy. He said I was trying to manipulate him with guilt. He said I was acting like a child. He said he had to go. Jennifer was waiting. Their flight was boarding soon. He said he hoped I would calm down and stop being ridiculous. He said he would call me when he got back from Bali, and hopefully I would be in a better mood. Then he hung up. Just like that. He hung up on me. His mother. The woman who had raised him alone. The woman who had worked double shifts so he could have new shoes. The woman who had given him her mother's house so he could impress his manipulative wife. He hung up on me like I was a telemarketer. Like I was nothing. I sat in my apartment, holding my phone, staring at the screen. And I felt an unexpected sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in decades, I had set a boundary. I had said no. I had chosen myself. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was necessary. And it was long overdue. The following weeks were hard. Marcus did not call. I did not call him. My coworkers asked how the wedding had been. I said it was lovely and changed the subject. Diana called me every few days to check in. Dr. Reeves told me I had done something incredibly brave. But I did not feel brave. I felt lost. My entire identity had been built around being Marcus's mother. Without that, who was I? What did I want? What did I even like? I realized with horror that I did not know. I had spent so long being what other people needed that I had forgotten how to be myself. Dr. Reeves gave me homework. She told me to make a list of things I had always wanted to do but never had time for. The list was embarrassingly short. I had wanted to learn to paint. I had wanted to take a cooking class. I had wanted to travel, maybe see Italy or Greece. I had wanted to have friends, real friends, not just coworkers I exchanged pleasantries with. So I started small. I signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. The instructor was a woman named Lorraine, probably in her 70s, with wild gray hair and paint-stained clothes. She told us that art was not about being perfect. It was about expressing what was inside you. I painted terrible, splotchy landscapes, but it felt good. I joined a book club at the library. The first meeting, I almost turned around and left. I stood outside the door, listening to laughter and animated voices, and felt like an imposter. What did I have to contribute? I had not read anything more substantial than nursing journals in years. But I made myself walk in. The women there were kind and funny and opinionated. There were 8 of us, ranging in age from mid-40s to late 70s. Gloria, the oldest, was a retired professor with white hair and sharp wit. Linda was a librarian who organized the group. Priya was a software engineer with a passion for mysteries. Elena was an artist who worked with mixed media. Vanessa was a stay-at-home mom whose kids had just left for college. Margaret worked in insurance. Beth was a chef at a local restaurant. And me, Catherine, a nurse who was learning to be a person again. We met twice a month at the library. We read everything. Literary fiction, thrillers, memoirs, even poetry. We argued about characters and themes and writing styles. We drank cheap wine smuggled in thermoses and ate whatever snacks people brought. We laughed until we cried. We cried over sad books and hard truths. We shared parts of our lives that had nothing to do with books. Vanessa talked about the emptiness she felt now that her kids were gone, how she did not know who she was without them. I understood that feeling intimately. Gloria talked about losing her husband and learning to live alone after 50 years of marriage. Priya talked about family pressure to get married, to have kids, when all she wanted was her career and her freedom. Elena talked about her daughter who was an addict, about the helplessness of watching someone you love destroy themselves. Beth talked about leaving her abusive ex-husband and rebuilding her life from scratch. Linda talked about choosing not to have children and dealing with the judgment that came with that choice. We all had pain, we all had struggles, but we also had each other. These women, who had started as strangers, became my support system, my friends, my chosen family. They invited me to things outside of book club, coffee dates and museum trips and weekend hikes. They invited me into their lives and I let them in. It was scary at first. Friendship required vulnerability. It required showing up as my authentic self, flaws and all. But these women did not judge me. They saw me. They accepted me. They celebrated me. When I told them about Marcus and the beach house and the wedding, they were outraged on my behalf. They did not tell me to forgive and forget. They did not make excuses for him. They validated my pain. They told me I had every right to be angry. They told me I was brave for setting boundaries. They told me they were proud of me. Elena gave me a key to her art studio. She said I could use it whenever I wanted, to paint or just to sit in the creative energy. I started going there on Saturday mornings. Sometimes I painted, sometimes I just sat and watched Elena work, mesmerized by the way she layered colors and textures. She taught me techniques. She encouraged me to experiment, to make mistakes, to not be afraid of the blank canvas. Gloria invited me to her home for dinner. She lived in a beautiful old house filled with books and art and memories. She cooked a simple meal, pasta and salad, and we sat on her porch drinking wine and talking until midnight. She told me about her life, her career, her marriage, her regrets. She said the hardest lesson she had learned was that you could not make someone love you the way you wanted to be loved. You could only love yourself well and hope others followed your example. Vanessa and I started walking together on Sunday mornings. We would meet at the park and walk the loop trail, talking about everything and nothing. She confided that she was thinking about going back to school, getting a degree in social work. She said her kids leaving had forced her to confront who she was without them, and she did not like what she found. She said she had lost herself in motherhood, just like I had. We became each other's accountability partners, cheering each other on as we rebuilt our identities. These women saved me. They showed me what healthy relationships looked like. Relationships built on mutual respect and genuine interest and reciprocal care. Relationships where I did not have to earn love by sacrificing myself. Relationships where I could just be, and that was enough. One evening, we had a potluck at Linda's house. Everyone brought a dish, and we ate and drank and laughed until our faces hurt. At one point, Gloria raised her glass and proposed a toast. She said she wanted to toast to second chances. To women who refused to be defined by their pain, to friendships that healed, to the courage it took to start over. We all raised our glasses, and I felt, for the first time in my life, truly seen, truly valued, truly loved, not for what I could do or give, but for who I was. Imperfect, messy, broken in places, but whole. Human. Enough. These women taught me that it was okay to need people. That independence did not mean isolation. That asking for help was not weakness. That community was essential. They showed up when I needed them. And I learned to show up for them too. When Elena's daughter went back to rehab, I sat with her while she cried. When Priya's father passed away, I brought her meals and listened to stories about him. When Beth's restaurant had a slow month and she was scared about making rent, we all pitched in without being asked. We took care of each other. Not out of obligation, out of love, real love. The kind that gives without keeping score. The kind that sees someone struggling and reaches out a hand. The kind that celebrates victories, no matter how small. The kind that says you matter, and I am here. I started going to therapy twice a week. Dr. Reeves helped me unpack decades of guilt and martyrdom. Each session was like peeling away layers of an onion, revealing truths I had buried deep. She helped me see patterns I had not recognized. The way I apologized for taking up space. The way I minimized my own needs. The way I had taught Marcus, through my example, that love meant self-erasure. One session, Dr. Reeves asked me to describe a perfect day. Not a day for Marcus or anyone else. A day just for me. I sat there in silence for several minutes, realizing I did not know how to answer. I had spent so many years planning my life around other people that I had forgotten how to dream for myself. She asked me to close my eyes and imagine. What would I do if there were no obligations, no guilt, no expectations? I thought about it. I said I would wake up slowly, without an alarm. I would have coffee on a balcony overlooking water. I would paint in the morning light. I would read a book in the afternoon. I would have dinner with people who made me laugh. I would go to sleep feeling satisfied, not exhausted. Dr. Reeves asked me what was stopping me from having days like that. I started to list reasons, practical obstacles. But she stopped me. She said the real obstacle was not logistics. It was permission. I had never given myself permission to want things just for myself. I had been taught, or had taught myself, that mothers did not get to be selfish. That wanting things for yourself made you a bad person. She said that was a lie. She said self-care was not selfishness. She said boundaries were not cruelty. She said I had confused love with martyrdom, and that confusion had nearly destroyed me. I cried in that session. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I did not know existed. I cried for all the years I had spent making myself smaller. I cried for the young mother I had been, so scared of failing that she had sacrificed everything. I cried for the beach house, for my mother, for the dreams I had deferred. I cried until I was empty. And then Dr. Reeves said something that changed everything. She said grief was necessary. She said I needed to mourn the life I thought I would have before I could embrace the life I could still create. She said I was not too old to start over. She said it was never too late to choose yourself. She helped me see that I had been so afraid of being a bad mother that I had become a doormat. She helped me understand that teaching Marcus boundaries would have been a gift, not a punishment. That by always saying yes, by always sacrificing, I had taught him that other people did not matter. That love was something you took, not something you cherished. She helped me see that my pain, while caused by Marcus, was ultimately my responsibility to heal. That I could not wait for him to fix me. I had to fix myself. She helped me forgive myself for not knowing better. She said I had done the best I could with the tools I had. She said many women of my generation were raised to believe that motherhood was martyrdom, that we were supposed to disappear into our roles, that our own dreams and desires were secondary, even irrelevant. She said unlearning that programming was hard work, but it was possible. She said I was doing it. One session at a time, one boundary at a time, one choice at a time. Dr. Reeves also helped me process my anger. I had spent so long suppressing it, pretending I was fine, that I did not even recognize how much rage I was carrying. She taught me that anger was not bad. It was information. It was telling me that my boundaries had been violated, that I had been treated unfairly, that something needed to change. She taught me to sit with the anger instead of pushing it away, to feel it fully, to let it burn through me and then let it go. We did exercises. She had me write letters I would never send. To Marcus, to Jennifer, to my younger self. Letters full of everything I had never said, every hurt I had swallowed, every moment I had pretended to be okay when I was not. The act of writing them was cathartic. I filled pages with raw emotion, with truths I had kept locked inside. And when I was done, Dr. Reeves had me read them out loud, just to her in the safety of her office. My voice shook. I cried, but I also felt something release, like a pressure valve finally opening. She taught me mantras to combat negative self-talk. When I caught myself thinking I was a bad mother, I was supposed to say out loud, I am a good mother who deserves respect. When I felt guilty for setting boundaries, I was supposed to say, boundaries are acts of love. When I wanted to apologize for existing, I was supposed to say, I matter. I have value. I deserve to take up space. At first, the mantras felt silly, performative. But over time, they started to sink in. My brain began to believe them. I started to believe them. Slowly, painfully, I started to build a life that was mine. Not Marcus's, not anyone else's. Mine. 3 months after the wedding, Jennifer called me. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was cold, professional. She said Marcus was upset that I was not reaching out. She said I was being childish. She said family was supposed to forgive and forget. She said I owed Marcus an apology for how I had acted. I felt the old instinct rising, the urge to apologize, to smooth things over, to make myself small so everyone else could be comfortable. But then I remembered Lorraine telling me that art was about expressing what was inside. And what was inside me was anger. Righteous, justified anger. I told Jennifer that I did not owe Marcus anything. I told her that she had manipulated my son into betraying me. I told her that she could control Marcus, but she could not control me. I told her that if Marcus wanted a relationship with me, he needed to be the one to reach out and apologize. Then I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful. 2 weeks later, Marcus called. His voice was different, smaller. He said he wanted to talk. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Marcus looked tired when he arrived. The newlywed glow had faded. There were shadows under his eyes. He sat down across from me and fidgeted with his cup. He said Jennifer was angry that I had hung up on her. He said things at home were tense. He said he did not understand why I was making everything so difficult. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, and saw clearly for the first time how much he had changed. Or maybe he had always been this way, and I had refused to see it. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident young professional who had stood at that altar was gone, replaced by someone who seemed lost. Marcus kept talking. He said Jennifer had been upset since the honeymoon. He said she complained constantly about the house, about his job, about his inability to make her happy. He said she compared him to her father, to her friends' husbands, and he always came up short. He said he was trying so hard, but nothing was ever good enough. He paused, looked down at his coffee, and said he was starting to wonder if getting married had been a mistake. I could have said I told you so. I could have twisted the knife. But looking at my son, seeing his pain, I felt no satisfaction in being right. I felt sad for him. Sad that he had to learn this lesson the hard way. Sad that he had hurt me to please someone who would never be pleased. I told Marcus that I loved him. I told him I would always love him, but I told him that love did not mean accepting disrespect. I told him that he had hurt me deeply. I told him that his speech at the wedding had revealed that he saw me as an obstacle, not a person. I told him that until he could see me as someone who deserved kindness and consideration, I could not have a relationship with him. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He said he had not meant to hurt me. He said Jennifer had convinced him that selling the beach house was the right thing to do, that I would understand, that it was just property. He said he had been so caught up in trying to make Jennifer happy that he had stopped thinking about anyone else. He said he did not know how to fix it. I told Marcus that I did not need him to fix it. Not yet. I told him he needed to figure out who he was and what he wanted from his life. I told him he needed to stop living for other people's approval and start living for himself. I told him that until he did that work, no apology would mean anything. Marcus tried to argue. He said I was exaggerating. He said the beach house was not that important. He said I was choosing pride over family. But his voice cracked when he said it, like he did not quite believe his own words anymore. I stood up. I told him that I was choosing myself. I told him that when he was ready to do the same, when he was ready to be honest about what he had done and why, I would be here. But not before. And I walked out. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, walking away from my son. But it was also the most necessary, because I finally understood what Dr. Reeves had been trying to teach me. Boundaries were not walls, they were doors. And the people who loved you would respect those doors. The people who did not would try to break them down. The months that followed were a mix of grief and growth. I mourned the relationship I had thought I had with Marcus. I mourned the future I had imagined, where I would be a beloved grandmother, where my son would visit me at the beach house, where we would be close. I let myself feel the loss fully, without trying to fix it or minimize it. But I also kept building my new life. I got better at watercolor. Lorraine said I had a good eye for color. The book club women invited me on a weekend trip to the mountains. We stayed in a cabin, hiked during the day, and played cards at night. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. I felt young. I started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with men I met through friends or online. It was awkward and sometimes disappointing, but also kind of fun. I had forgotten what it felt like to flirt, to have someone look at me like I was interesting. There was Robert, a retired teacher who talked too much about his ex-wife. There was David, a sweet man who worked at the library but had no spark. There was Michael, who seemed promising until he asked me to lend him money on our third date. Each experience taught me something. I learned that I did not need a relationship to feel complete. I learned that being alone was better than being with the wrong person. I learned that I could enjoy my own company. One evening, I went to a local gallery opening. One of the women from my book club, Elena, had invited me. She said there would be wine and interesting people. I almost did not go. The old Catherine would have made an excuse, would have stayed home watching television. But the new Catherine put on a dress she actually liked, applied lipstick, and showed up. The gallery was small, tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage bookstore. The walls were covered with abstract paintings, bold colors, and sweeping brushstrokes. I stood in front of one piece, a chaos of reds and oranges, and felt something stir in my chest. It reminded me of anger, of passion, of all the emotions I had suppressed for so long. A man standing next to me commented on the painting. He said it looked like a sunrise, or maybe a forest fire. I said it looked like liberation. He smiled. His name was Thomas. He was an architect, divorced, with 2 grown daughters who lived out of state. He had kind eyes and paint under his fingernails. He asked if I was an artist. I said I was learning to be. We talked for an hour, about art and life and the strange paths that bring people to where they are. He asked if I would like to get coffee sometime. I said yes. We exchanged numbers. When I got home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I thought Thomas was my soulmate or because I needed a man to validate me, but because I had shown up for myself. I had put myself out there. I had said yes to possibility. Thomas and I went on several dates over the following weeks. We visited museums and tried new restaurants and walked through parks discussing everything and nothing. He was easy to be with. He listened when I talked. He shared his own stories of divorce and rebuilding. He did not try to fix me or save me. He just enjoyed my company, and I enjoyed his. One evening, we were having dinner at a small Italian place downtown. Thomas asked me what I wanted out of life now, at this stage. I thought about it for a long time. I told him I wanted to feel free. I wanted to create things. I wanted to travel and experience the world without apology. I wanted relationships that were built on mutual respect, not obligation. I wanted to be seen and valued for who I was, not just for what I could do for other people. Thomas reached across the table and took my hand. He said I deserved all of that. He said I was one of the bravest people he had ever met. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not sad tears, grateful tears. I took a pottery class. I was terrible at it, but I loved the feeling of clay between my fingers, the way it required complete focus. The instructor, a young woman named Sophia, was patient and encouraging. She showed me how to center the clay on the wheel, how to use my hands to shape it, how to accept imperfection as part of the creative process. I made bowls that collapsed. I made vases that leaned at odd angles. I made a mug with a handle that fell off in the kiln. But I also made a small planter that turned out surprisingly well. I glazed it in shades of blue and green, colors that reminded me of the ocean. I planted a succulent in it and put it on my windowsill. Every time I looked at it, I felt proud. The pottery class became a sanctuary. There was something meditative about working with clay, about shaping something with my own hands. Sophia encouraged us to think of pottery as a metaphor for life. Sometimes things fall apart. Sometimes you have to start over. Sometimes the imperfections are what make a piece beautiful. I thought about that a lot. About how my life had fallen apart and how I was rebuilding it, piece by piece, into something new and imperfect and beautiful. I started planning a trip to Italy for my 61st birthday. Solo travel. The idea terrified me, but it also thrilled me. I had never traveled alone. I had barely traveled at all. But I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, that I could navigate a foreign country by myself, that I could be independent and capable and brave. I bought guidebooks and travel journals. I watched videos about Italy online. I practiced basic Italian phrases. Buongiorno. Grazie. Dov'è il bagno? I planned my itinerary carefully. 5 days in Rome, exploring ancient ruins and eating gelato. 3 days in Florence, visiting museums and walking across the Ponte Vecchio. 4 days on the Amalfi Coast, soaking in the sun and the sea. I booked hotels and train tickets. I made lists of restaurants and landmarks. I felt like a kid planning for Christmas. Diana thought I was crazy. She said Italy was too much for a first solo trip. She said I should start smaller, maybe a weekend in a nearby city. But I did not want to start smaller. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to do something that scared me. I wanted to prove that I could. My coworkers were impressed. One of them, a younger nurse named Ashley, said she wished she had my courage. I told her she did. She just had not discovered it yet. Ashley confided in me that she was in an unhappy relationship, that her boyfriend was controlling and dismissive. But she was afraid to leave because she had been with him for 5 years and did not know who she would be without him. I looked at this young woman, barely 30, and saw myself decades ago. I told her my story. I told her about Marcus and the beach house and the wedding. I told her about setting boundaries and choosing myself. I told her that leaving was hard, but staying when you were miserable was harder. Ashley cried. She said she needed to hear that. She said she had been making excuses for her boyfriend, convincing herself that things would get better, that she just needed to be more understanding. I told her that understanding was important, but so was self-respect. I told her that she deserved to be with someone who treated her like she mattered. A few weeks later, Ashley came to work with a lightness I had not seen before. She said she had ended the relationship. She said it had been awful and painful and necessary. She said she felt free. I hugged her. I told her I was proud of her. I realized that my story, my pain, could help other people. That by being honest about my struggles, I could give others permission to face their own. It was a strange gift, born from betrayal and heartbreak. But it was a gift nonetheless. 6 months after our coffee shop conversation, Marcus called again. This time his voice was different, hesitant, almost humble. He asked if we could meet. I agreed. We met at the same coffee shop. Marcus looked older. There were lines around his eyes I had not noticed before. He sat down and took a deep breath. Then he apologized. Really apologized. Not the performative kind where you say sorry but then justify everything you did. He said he had been thinking a lot. He said his relationship with Jennifer was struggling. He said therapy, couples therapy that she had insisted on, had helped him see things differently. He said the therapist had asked him about his family, and he had started talking about me. And he had realized how much he had taken me for granted. Marcus said he was sorry for letting Jennifer manipulate him into selling the beach house. He said he was sorry for the speech at the wedding. He said he was sorry for not standing up for me, for not seeing how much I had sacrificed, for treating my love like it was an obligation instead of a gift. He said he understood if I could not forgive him. He said he just wanted me to know that he finally understood what he had done. I looked at my son, and I saw genuine remorse. But I also saw something else. I saw that this apology was not just about me. It was about him, too. Marcus was apologizing because his life had not turned out the way he expected, and he was realizing that cutting me out had left a hole he could not fill. I told Marcus I appreciated his apology. I told him I could see he meant it. But I also told him that sorry was not enough. I told him that rebuilding trust would take time. I told him that I needed to see consistent change, not just words. I told him that I would not go back to being the mother who said yes to everything. I told him that if he wanted me in my life, he needed to accept the person I was becoming, not the person I used to be. Marcus nodded. He said he understood. He said he would do whatever it took. He asked if we could maybe have dinner sometime. I said maybe. I told him I would think about it. We left the coffee shop separately. I did not cry this time. I felt calm, strong. I had set my terms. Whatever happened next was up to Marcus. Over the next few months, Marcus made an effort. He called once a week, just to talk. At first, the conversations were stilted, awkward. We danced around real topics, sticking to safe things like weather and work. But gradually, slowly, we found our way to something more honest. He asked about my painting. I told him about a watercolor I had finished, a seascape inspired by my time in Positano. He asked to see it. I sent him a photo. He said it was beautiful, that he could feel the peace in it. It was a small thing, but it meant something. He was seeing me, really seeing me. He told me about work stress, about a difficult client, about feeling like he was running on a hamster wheel. I listened. I asked questions. I did not try to fix it or give unsolicited advice. I just listened. And I could hear the relief in his voice, like he had been waiting for someone to simply hear him. One evening, Marcus called and his voice sounded different. Shaky. He said he had something to tell me. He said he and Jennifer had started couples therapy at her insistence. He said the therapist had asked him some hard questions about his childhood, about his relationship with me, about why he made the choices he made. He said he had been forced to look at things he had been avoiding. He said he was starting to understand how much he had taken me for granted, how much Jennifer had controlled his decisions, how much he had let fear guide his life. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being alone. Marcus said the therapist had asked him to write me a letter, not to send, just to process his feelings. But after writing it, he realized he wanted me to read it. He asked if he could mail it to me. I said yes. The letter arrived 3 days later. I held the envelope for a long time before opening it. Part of me was afraid of what it would say, afraid of empty apologies or more excuses. But when I finally read it, I cried. Marcus wrote about growing up without a father, about feeling like he had to be perfect to make up for it, about the pressure he felt to succeed so I would not regret keeping him. He wrote about meeting Jennifer and being dazzled by her confidence, her certainty, her world so different from ours. He wrote about how she made him feel important, needed, like he could be someone significant. He wrote about how slowly, without realizing it, he had started seeing the world through her eyes. And in her eyes, I was not a person who had sacrificed everything for him. I was baggage. an anchor weighing him down. Marcus wrote that he was ashamed. He wrote that he had betrayed not just me, but himself. He wrote that his speech at the wedding had been the worst thing he had ever done, not just because it hurt me, but because it revealed who he had become. Someone he did not recognize. Someone he did not want to be. He wrote that he did not expect forgiveness. He wrote that he understood if I never wanted to see him again. But he wanted me to know that he was trying to change. He was trying to become someone worthy of the love I had given him. He was trying to find his way back to the boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them roses. I read the letter 3 times, then I called him. I told Marcus I appreciated his honesty. I told him I could see he was doing hard work. But I also told him that sorry was not enough. I told him that rebuilding trust would take time and consistent effort. I told him I needed to see actions, not just words. I told him I would not go back to being the mother who said yes to everything, who made herself small, who sacrificed her own needs. I told him if he wanted me in his life, he needed to accept the person I was becoming, not the person I used to be. Marcus said he understood. His voice was thick with emotion. He said he wanted to earn back my trust. He said he would do whatever it took. He asked if we could maybe have dinner sometime. Just the 2 of us. No agenda, just time together. I said maybe. I told him I would think about it. I needed to feel ready, needed to feel strong enough to sit across from him without falling back into old patterns. 2 weeks later, I agreed to dinner. We met at a quiet restaurant, neither of our usual places. Fresh start. We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Marcus started. He thanked me for coming. He said he knew it was not easy. He asked about my book club, about Lorraine and the watercolor classes. He asked about Thomas, the man I had mentioned in passing during a phone call. I told him Thomas and I were seeing each other casually, that it was nice, but not serious. Marcus said he was glad I was happy. He said I deserved that. We talked for 2 hours. It was not perfect. There were awkward pauses. There were moments of tension when old wounds surfaced. But there were also moments of genuine connection. Moments where we laughed at a shared memory. Moments where we understood each other without words. When we left the restaurant, Marcus hugged me. It was tentative, careful, like he was afraid I might push him away. But I hugged him back. It was not the embrace of before, full of unspoken expectations and unbalanced giving. It was different. Smaller, but more honest. He did not mention Jennifer much during dinner, and I did not ask. But as we stood on the sidewalk saying goodbye, Marcus said things at home were not good. He said therapy was revealing cracks he could not ignore. He said he did not know what would happen. He looked scared, like a little boy lost in a big world. I told him that sometimes things had to fall apart before they could come back together in a better way. I told him I was proof of that. He nodded. He said he hoped I was right. We started having dinner once a month, then twice a month. Each time we peeled back another layer. We talked about his childhood, about moments I had not known affected him. We talked about my loneliness, about the years I had spent pretending I was fine when I was drowning. We talked about the beach house, finally, really talked about it. Marcus cried when he described the guilt he felt, how he thought about it every day, how he wished he could undo it. I told him we could not change the past, but we could learn from it. We could do better going forward. Marcus told me he and Jennifer were separated. She had moved back in with her parents. He said they were trying to figure out if the marriage was salvageable, but he was not sure he wanted to salvage it. He said therapy had revealed that he had built his entire life around what other people wanted and had no idea what he actually wanted for himself. He said he was learning slowly to listen to his own voice, the voice he had silenced for so long. I told him I understood that feeling. I told him it took me 60 years to find my own voice. I told him he was ahead of the curve. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something. It was not the same relationship we had before. It was smaller, more honest, more equal. Marcus stopped treating me like an ATM or a therapist or someone who existed only to serve his needs. I stopped treating him like he was still a child who needed me to fix everything. We talked like adults. We disagreed sometimes. We set boundaries. We respected them. It was strange and uncomfortable and good. For my 61st birthday, I went to Italy. I spent 2 weeks living a life I had only dreamed about. The flight from Boston to Rome felt endless. I sat by the window, watching the sun set over the Atlantic, wondering if I was crazy for doing this alone. But when the plane touched down at Fiumicino Airport and I stepped out into the warm Roman air, something shifted. I was here. I had done it. Rome was overwhelming and magical. I got lost trying to find my hotel, dragging my suitcase over cobblestone streets, asking for directions in broken Italian. An elderly woman took pity on me and walked me 3 blocks out of her way. When I tried to thank her, she patted my cheek and said something in rapid Italian that I did not understand but felt in my heart. My hotel was near Piazza Navona. The owner, Carla, showed me to my room on the 3rd floor. No elevator. But when I opened the shutters and looked out at the terracotta rooftops and church domes, I understood. This was beauty. This was history. This was life. I spent my days wandering. The Colosseum at dawn. The Pantheon with light pouring through the oculus. Coins into the Trevi fountain. I ate alone in small trattorias, ordering pasta carbonara and cacio e pepe, drinking house wine. At first, eating alone felt uncomfortable, but slowly, I learned to enjoy it. I brought a book, journaled, people watched. One evening, I sat at a cafe near the Spanish Steps eating gelato. A woman at the next table, Margaret from Australia, struck up a conversation. We talked for 2 hours about our lives, our journeys, the courage it took to travel alone at our age. She told me about losing her husband and deciding to see the world. When we parted, she hugged me tight and told me I was braver than I knew. In Florence, I stayed in an apartment overlooking the Arno River. Church bells and espresso smells each morning. Hours in the Uffizi Gallery, standing in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. I climbed to the top of the Duomo, 463 steps, legs burning. But when I reached the top and looked out over Florence, I felt victorious. I took a day trip to the Tuscan countryside. A small group tour visiting vineyards and medieval towns. Rolling hills covered in olive groves and cypress trees. At a family winery, Paolo poured Chianti and told stories about his grandfather. I sat in the sun, sipping wine, listening to laughter, feeling more present than I had in years. On the Amalfi Coast, I stayed in Positano. The streets were steep and narrow, lined with shops selling ceramics and lemon liqueur. I rented a room with a balcony overlooking the sea. Every morning, breakfast on that balcony, watching fishing boats below. I spent days on the beach, reading and swimming. The water was so clear I could see my feet. I floated on my back, staring at the sky, feeling the sun on my face. I felt cleansed, reborn. One afternoon, I hiked the path of the gods along the cliffs. Challenging, but the views were breathtaking. At one overlook, I sat on a stone wall and looked out at the Mediterranean. I thought about my mother, wished she could see this. I thought about Marcus, hoped someday he would find his own path. And I thought about myself, about how far I had come. I cried on that cliff. Not sad tears, healing tears. All the pain and anger and grief I had been carrying, I let it go. Let it blow away on the wind. And I felt lighter, ready to be filled with new experiences, new joys, new versions of myself. On my last night, I had dinner at a restaurant built into the cliffside. Local fish and white wine. The sun set over the water, painting the sky pink and gold. The waiter brought me tiramisu with a candle. The restaurant sang happy birthday in Italian. I made a wish. I wished for more of this, more courage, more adventure, more life lived on my own terms. I stood on my balcony one last time, breathing in lemons and sea salt, listening to waves. I felt grateful. Grateful for the courage that had brought me here. Grateful for the pain that had taught me who I really was. Grateful for the future that stretched out before me. I felt free. I felt like myself. Not Marcus's mother, not the nurse who worked double shifts, not the woman who had lost everything. Just Catherine. A woman who liked art and good food and beautiful views. A woman learning to take up space without apologizing. I sent Marcus a postcard from Rome. It said, "Wish you were here," and I meant it. Not because I needed him with me, but because I wanted to share this joy. There was a difference. When I got back, Marcus picked me up from the airport. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. He asked about the trip. I showed him photos on my phone. He seemed genuinely interested. He told me I looked happy. I told him I was. Marcus mentioned that he and Jennifer were getting divorced. He said it was mutual. He said they had wanted different things. He said he was moving to a smaller apartment. He asked if I could help him pick out furniture. I said yes. We went to a furniture store on a Saturday. It was fun shopping together, helping him choose pieces that fit his new life. Marcus agonized over which couch to buy. I made suggestions. He listened. On the drive home, Marcus said thank you. Not just for helping with furniture, for everything. For not giving up on him, for setting boundaries, for showing him that it was possible to start over. I told him he was welcome. I told him I was proud of him for doing the hard work. I told him I loved him. He said he loved me too, and this time I believed it. It has been 2 years since the wedding. Marcus and I have a good relationship now. Not perfect, but real. He respects my boundaries. I respect his. We have dinner every couple of weeks. He comes to my art shows at the community center. I help him navigate his post-divorce life. We are finding our way. I never got the beach house back. That still hurts sometimes. But I have other things now. I have my painting. I have my friends. I have my independence. I have a second trip to Europe planned, this time to Greece. I have a life that is mine. Last month, Marcus brought me flowers. Just because. He said he had been thinking about everything I had given up for him over the years. He said he could never repay me, but he wanted to try. He said he was saving money. He said maybe, in a few years, he could help me buy a small place near the coast. Not the same beach house, but something new. Something that could be ours together. I told him that was not necessary. I told him I did not need him to fix the past. But I appreciated the gesture. I appreciated that he saw me now. Really saw me. We sat together in my apartment, drinking tea, talking about nothing important, and I realized something. I had spent so long thinking that motherhood meant sacrificing everything. I had thought that love meant making myself smaller so someone else could be bigger. I had thought that boundaries were selfish. But I was wrong. The greatest gift I could have given Marcus was not my endless sacrifice. It was my example. By learning to stand up for myself, by learning to value my own needs, by learning to say no, I had shown him what healthy love looked like. I had shown him that you could love someone and still have limits. I had shown him that respect was not optional. And maybe, just maybe, I had saved him from becoming someone who took love for granted. Someone who thought relationships were about control instead of partnership. Someone who never learned that the people who love you are not obstacles to overcome, but gifts to cherish. I look at Marcus now, this grown man who is finally learning to be himself. And I feel something I have not felt in a long time. Not just love, not just hope, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you did the hardest thing and survived. The kind of peace that comes from building a life on your own terms. The kind of peace that comes from finally choosing yourself. My son sold my beach house to get married. He betrayed me at his own wedding. He broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. But from those pieces, I built something new. I built myself. And that, I have learned, is worth more than any house, any relationship, any sacrifice. I am Catherine Monroe. I am 63 years old now. I am an artist, a friend, a traveler, a woman who likes wine and laughter and sunsets. I am a mother, yes. But I am so much more than that. And I am finally learning to celebrate all the parts of me. The journey is not over. There will be more challenges, more heartaches, more moments where I have to choose between what is easy and what is right. But now I know I can do it. I know I can survive the hard choices. I know I can stand alone. And I know that the people who truly love me will stand beside me, not in front of me, not behind me, but beside me, as equals. That is the lesson I learned too late, but not too late to matter. That is the lesson I will carry with me for the rest of my life. That is the lesson I hope to pass on to anyone who needs to hear it. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot love others if you do not love yourself. You cannot build healthy relationships without boundaries. And you cannot find peace by sacrificing who you are at the altar of who you think you should be. I learned this the hard way. But I learned it. And I am grateful. Not for the pain. Not for the betrayal. But for the woman I became because of it. The woman who knows her worth. The woman who takes up space. The woman who says no when she needs to and yes when she wants to. The woman who is finally, blessedly, unapologetically herself. My name is Catherine Monroe. This is my story, and I am just getting started.